What happens now that Ukraine has lost U.S. support? Well, that's the big question. Now that America is stepping back, does Ukraine have a path to victory, or is this the beginning of the end? To answer that, we need to break down three things: Ukraine's military capability without U.S. weapons, the economic fallout of losing American dollars, and whether Europe is willing or even able to step up in America's place. Stick around, because the answer might not be what you expect. Before we get into it, make sure to like, subscribe for more hard-hitting geopolitical analysis. First, the military reality. Ukraine's war machine runs on American fuel. Take away U.S. support and the balance on the battlefield changes overnight. The numbers don't lie. Right now, Ukraine is already rationing shells. Some frontline units fire only 5 per day, while Russian forces unleash 50. And without American supply chains keeping Ukraine's artillery stocked, that imbalance only gets worse. But it's not just about the ammunition. The high-tech weapons that have helped Ukraine level the playing field, HIMARS, Patriot, drone technology, are overwhelmingly U.S. made. Europe can supply small arms, but it doesn't have the industrial base to mass produce the advanced long-range weapons that have kept Ukraine in the game. That means Ukraine will have to fight a defensive war, relying on whatever old Soviet-era stockpiles remain. It also means Russia gets to dictate the pace of battle. While Ukraine waits for limited European aid, Moscow can push forward with its near-limitless supply of artillery and manpower. And then there's the problem of intelligence. A lot of Ukraine's battlefield success has come not just from American weapons, but from American eyes. The U.S. has provided Kyiv with real-time satellite data, surveillance drone intelligence, and battlefield assessments that have allowed Ukraine to target Russian forces with pinpoint accuracy. If that support is cut off, Ukraine loses its technological edge and Putin gains the advantage. The brutal truth? Without U.S. backing, Ukraine shifts from an army capable of launching counteroffensives to an army struggling to hold the line. Next, economic collapse. The war isn't just fought on the battlefield, it's fought in the economy. Right now, Ukraine is surviving on borrowed time and borrowed money. Its economy is in shambles, with GDP still well below pre-war levels and inflation soaring. The only reason the Ukrainian government is still functioning? U.S. money. Washington has been sending billions in direct economic assistance every single month just to keep Ukraine's lights on. Government salaries, pensions, social services, even rebuild bombed out infrastructure, all of it depends on Western funding. Take away that and Kyiv faces an economic freefall. Now let's talk about what happens to investors. Right now, businesses and foreign firms are still waiting to bet on Ukraine's future because they assume America won't let it fail. But if that assumption changes, the flood of investment turns into a trickle. Without confidence and long-term U.S. support, Ukraine's economy isn't just fragile, it's unsustainable. And here's where things get interesting. If the West stops bankrolling Ukraine's survival, someone else might step in. That someone? China. Beijing has been quietly expanding its economic influence in Ukraine, negotiating deals for critical minerals and infrastructure projects. If Washington pulls back, China fills the vacuum. And if Ukraine finds itself economically tied to Beijing, it could end up trading one dependency for another. But here's the problem. Trump won't tolerate Ukraine getting cozy with China. His entire foreign policy has been based about cutting off Beijing's ability to expand its influence. That means Ukraine, caught between losing American aid and avoiding Chinese dependence, will be left with fewer and fewer options. Does Europe take charge? So if America steps back, does Europe step in? The short answer, not fast enough. European leaders love to talk about supporting Ukraine, but when it comes to real numbers, they simply can't replace what the U.S. provides. Germany and France are ramping up arms production, but Europe's military industry isn't built for a prolonged, high-intensity war. Their stockpiles are already depleted, and their defense industries are years away from producing enough weapons to fill the gap left by America. And then there's the politics. While Eastern European countries like Poland and the Baltics remain committed to Ukraine's fight, the reality is that Western Europe wants this war over. Leaders in Berlin and Paris would rather push for negotiated settlement than risk open-ended military commitments. If Washington stops writing the checks, European capitals won't be far behind. And this is where things get dangerous. If Europe signals that it's willing to accept negotiated peace, that's a win for Putin. He doesn't need to conquer all of Ukraine. He just needs to wait for the West to get tired. If Europe starts pushing Kyiv toward the bargaining table, Russia solidifies its gains. Ukraine loses its best chance to reclaim lost territory, and NATO looks weaker than ever. So, where does all this go? Best case scenario, Trump cuts a deal with Ukraine. Maybe that means reduced military aid, but continued economic support. Enough to keep Kyiv afloat, but not enough to escalate the war. Worst case scenario, US aid dries up, Europe scrambles but can't keep up, and Ukraine is forced into a bad peace deal that locks in Russia's territorial gains. One thing for sure, Trump is recalibrating the strategy. In his view, America shouldn't be on the hook for endless wars, especially when Europe isn't paying its fair share. Is that smart policy? Maybe. Is it risky? Absolutely. But make no mistake, if US support collapses, the war doesn't end, it just changes, and fast. So what do you think? Does Ukraine stand a chance without US support? Will Europe actually step up, or is this the beginning of a forced peace deal? Drop a comment below and let's debate. If you want to stay ahead of global power shifts, hit that subscribe button because geopolitics isn't slowing down anytime soon. This is Frank for America's Geopolitics. See you next time.